At the start of the movie, we are shown that a beautiful woman named Vera has been held hostage by a devious man named Robert Ledgard. Robert, who is a plastic surgeon by profession, has been working day and night to develop an artificial skin that is burn resistant and can also repel insect bites. One day, Robert is at a medical press conference where he states his theories and urges the other doctors to join him on his research. Here, we get to know that Robert is a big shot who has the support and admiration of many people, although the other doctors believe him to be insane. After the meeting, he returns home and watches Vera from a monitor that he has installed next to his bed. He observes her for a while, but doesn't notice any movements. Hence, Robert rushes to her room. To his horror, she has attempted the unthinkable. Robert immediately rushes her to his medical lab and rescues her in the nick of time. After a while, Vera gains consciousness and inquires if she will ever get to leave, but the doctor remains silent. This reveals that she has been held captive for a long time. Following this, we are given a brief overview of the place. Robert lives in a large mansion, which is almost isolated from the main city. He has no family or relatives, and his closest confidant is the housemaid, Marilia, who apparently knows about the hostage Vera. There are also a few other servants in the mansion, but they are oblivious to what's going on. One day, while Robert is having breakfast, Marilia gives him a gallon of blood and reveals that she extracted it from a live animal. Wasting no time, Robert takes the gallon and heads to his lab to conduct some experiments on it. After a while, he successfully extracts a sample of artificial skin and applies it to a dummy. Then he transplants the dummy's skin and puts it on Vera. At last, Robert conducts numerous burn and mosquito tests and concludes that the skin is indeed resistant from all of them. It's not entirely insect repellent though. The doctor is still there. A few days later, the manic doctor is at another press conference where he announces that he has successfully invented a skin that is burn and mosquito resistant. He has named it Gal. According to Robert, this new invention will eradicate malaria completely off the earth. After the presentation, he is approached by the head of the plastic surgery community, who inquires about how he created the skin. Robert replies that Gal is the name of his late wife, who was severely burnt. He also reveals that he combined genes of pigs and humans to make this new skin, which is harder and much more resilient. Hearing this, the chief scientist is shocked, as the practice is completely illegal and immoral. Hence, he orders Robert to stop his research, and even threatens to report his activities to the board if he doesn't oblige. At night, a depressed Robert walks into Vera's room and tells her that he has completed all of his experiments on her. This excites Vera, and she asks if he will release her, but once again, Robert doesn't say anything. After a while, Marilia advises Robert to dispose of Vera as soon as possible because she believes that Vera's resemblance to his late wife Gal might create problems. However, Robert asserts that he is not worried and orders Marilia to fire all the servants to keep Vera's abduction a secret. The following day, after all the servants have left, a man in a tiger costume arrives at the door. He tells Marilia that he is her son, Zika, whom she hasn't met in over 10 years. He does this by showing her his ass. Marilia is hesitant at first, but soon her maternal instincts kick in and she allows him inside. But after a while, when Zika is having a meal, the television flashes news about a recent bank robbery. From the news, Marilia finds out that Zika is one of the escaped robbers. When she confronts him about it, he readily accepts his crime, saying it is his daily bread and butter. However, he also requests her to let him stay for a few days, claiming that he has nowhere else to go and needs to hide. As the two are talking, Zika sees Vera on the surveillance monitor and is stunned by her physique. He asks Marilia about her location but gets no reply. Desperate to find the girl, Zika ties his mother to a chair and starts looking for Vera. He eventually finds her room and starts forcing himself onto her. Strangely, while Zika is doing so, he says that he is surprised to see her alive. Turns out that Vera looks exactly like Robert's deceased wife, Gal, and Zika was involved with her somehow. Just then, Robert arrives home and finds Marilia tied to the chair. When he checks the camera, he sees Vera being assaulted by the intruder. Furious, he rushes to the room with a gun and immediately finishes off Zika. Then, he holds Vera in his arms and promises to never let her out of his sight again. Shortly after, as Marilia is cleaning the bloodstained sheets, she tells Vera that the deceased Zika and Robert were brothers, although it is a secret that only she knows about. Zika was born to a construction worker, while Robert was fathered by a wealthy businessman, under whom she worked previously. This means that Marilia is the biological mother of Robert, but he is completely oblivious to it. That night, the two again meet, and Vera asks Marilia Marilia why Zika acted as if he knew her. Marilia replies that he mistook her for Robert's wife Gal, who looked exactly like her. She continues that the two brothers had completely contrasting childhoods. Robert grew up in a rich family and went on to become a successful doctor, whereas Zika grew up on the streets and became a criminal. Marilia also reveals that Robert and his wife Gal had a daughter named Norma, and the family was very happy at one point. However, things took a turn for the worse when Zika arrived at their house one day and Marilia allowed him to stay in the farmhouse. The moment Zika saw Gal, they felt an instant connection, and with the days passing by, they started meeting frequently and eventually fell in love. One day, they decided to run away from Robert in a car. However, midway, they got into a fatal accident. Zika immediately ran away from the burning vehicle, leaving his lover behind. By the time Robert reached the scene, his wife was in a vegetative state, with her face barely recognizable. Despite this, Robert never lost hope and took great care of his wife. He even removed all the mirrors from the house so that Gal wouldn't feel bad about her burnt appearance. Several months passed and Gal recovered well, but her once beautiful face could not be restored. One day, she heard her daughter singing outside, a song that made her feel emotion for the first time in years, and when she headed to the window to look, she accidentally saw her face in its reflection and became devastated at the sight of what she had become. Hence, with no willpower to continue living, she jumped out of the window and ended it all. Unfortunately, her lifeless body was noticed by Norma, who became traumatized by the sight. In the present, Vera and Robert have intercourse. The latter misses his wife a lot, so he imagines her and does the deed. After finishing up, the two cuddle and fall asleep. In his sleep, Robert dreams about his daughter's demise. In the next scene, the movie goes back to 6 years prior, where Norma is recovering from the trauma of her mother's death. On an evening, Robert and Norma attend a crowded party, and shortly after, she mysteriously vanishes. Robert goes looking for her, and as he is walking around, a guy rides past him on a motorcycle. Shortly thereafter, he discovers Norma lying unconscious near a tree trunk. When Robert wakes Norma up, she screams as if he had abused her. In the present, Robert suddenly awakens in a cold sweat. Turns out he has recurring nightmares about this very incident. At the same time, Vera dreams too, about a guy named Vicente who works in his mother's boutique store. Vicente has a crush on Christina, who also works in the same store, but is revealed to be a lesbian. One day, he attends the same party that Robert had seen in his vision. Coincidentally, he meets Norma, and they become fast friends. They then go inside the garden and suddenly start making love. It appears as if they are going to have a great time, but suddenly, Norma begins to have a psychotic break, something she's been medicating for ever since witnessing the death of her mother. She screams at the top of her lungs and even bites his hands. This scares Vicente a lot, so to shut her up, he smacks her in the face and knocks her out. Then, he hurriedly fixes her clothes and flees the scene. After a week, Vicente is seen riding his motorcycle through the woods. Surprisingly, Robert is following him, who has been looking for an opportunity to take revenge. He soon crashes Vicente's motorcycle and forcefully takes him to his basement room. Later, a cop informs Vicente's mom that they discovered his destroyed motorcycle at the base of a cliff. All the clues point to Vicente having fallen from the cliff, leaving his mother devastated. The next day, Robert goes to a mental hospital to check on his daughter Norma, but she refuses to accept him, thinking that he assaulted her, and shuts herself inside of a closet. She has developed a fear of all men and only cooperates with female nurses. Elsewhere, Robert has abused Vicente by keeping him chained and depriving him of food and water. A few days later, Norma passes away, having thrown herself from a window just like her mom. And to escape from her grief, Robert tries to indulge himself in work. Thus, he prepares Vicente for his new experiment by shaving him and taking him to the operation theater. He also invites other doctors and creates a fake statement of consent to perform a vaginoplasty on Vicente. Here, the master plan of Robert is finally revealed. He wants to transform Vicente into a female. After hours of surgery, the procedure is finally complete. When Vicente wakes up and learns that he is no longer a male, he freaks out. The next day, he is shifted to a better room. There, Robert takes good care of him and provides him with medicine and other necessary devices to make sure that his sexual organs grow properly. One day, Robert reveals that he abducted Vicente because of what he did to his daughter. The latter is scared, but he has no choice but to oblige to the mad doctor's demands. He hopes that one day he will finally be released. However, even after several years, he is still kept in captivity. He is also fully transformed into a female and has undergone numerous intensive procedures to slowly be made to look exactly like Robert's deceased wife, Gal. Vicente is none other than Vera. The movie then cuts back to the present where Marilia is angry that Vera is being allowed to freely roam the house. Robert even takes her on numerous shopping trips. Scared that something bad might happen, Marilia warns him that he shouldn't let Vera roam so freely, but Robert simply ignores her. Later that day, a colleague of Robert's comes to his home to show him a newspaper with Vicente's picture on it. He remembers conducting the sex change on him and accuses Robert of lying about Vicente's consent. But before things can get ugly, Vera approaches them and defends Robert by saying that she indeed gave consent to the surgery, as she wanted to be a female. After the colleague departs, Robert thanks Vera for saving the day. That night, as the two are having intercourse, Vera heads downstairs with the pretext of getting some lubricating cream. However, it's clear that she has other intentions. She takes out a gun from a drawer and hides it inside her bag. After gathering some courage, she then confronts Robert and reveals that she was just pretending to love him. Robert is speechless, and before he can say anything, Vera shoots him to death. Marilia, who is downstairs, is startled by the sound, and she rushes to the scene. But unfortunately for her, she is also finished off in the same manner as her boss. Vera is hiding under the bed, and as she shoots her, she says, "Peekaboo, bitch." In the final scene, Vera heads to her mother's boutique shop, where she meets her former crush, Christina. The two chat for a while, and Vera finally reveals everything about how she was abducted and forcefully turned into a female. She even shows a dress from 6 years before to prove that she is really Vicente. Hearing all this, Christina breaks into tears. The movie ends as Vera finally meets her mother and reveals that she is none other than her lost son. She says, "It is me, Vicente."